Hello everybody, my name is Bionicle and welcome back to the unboxing. I like Bionicles, so I went on eBay and bought another one. Um, yeah, this is a fairly weird unboxing that we're going to do. It's going to be technically filmed in two parts, put together. We'll figure it out. This is going to be the more unboxing-y segment, where we look at everything, but since it seems to be in parts, I'm going to put it together, off screen, and then we'll go from there. We'll do a brief segment where I look over the figure itself. Now, if you looked at the thumbnail, you know what figure this is, but I'm going to give a bit of context. I got into Bionicle late. My first sets were from '08. I got Antraz, I got Tahu Mystica, and I got Gorast. And then the year after, I got some of the Agori. I also got Matanui and Kina. Yeah. But then from there, Bionicle got canceled. I got like two of the stars. I got Tahu and the Skrull. But from there, Bionicle was canceled, so I kind of had to get into Hero Factory. And something you may notice is that I only got canister-sized sets and down. I never got any of the Titans. The first real Titan set I got out of any of the lines was Fire Lord. And then later on that year, I got Witch Doctor. I then took both of those apart. I took a lot of my sets apart, honestly, because I was one of those kids. But since then, I've been trying to create a new collection. I've bought a new Witch Doctor, which you've seen in previous videos. And now I'm trying to go back and complete, at least get a decent number of the old Bionicle sets. I've gotten some of the Toa Nuva. I've gotten, you've seen it in a video before. I got Pohatu Mata, but one of the main things I've gotten are all of the Toa and Naika. I didn't have any version of those characters, so I wanted them to be first, especially since this year's a certain anniversary for some other characters, who, or at least the year I'm recording this, not the year it's being released because of the way backlog works. But anyways, I'm going off on a tangent. Long story short, I didn't have Bionicle sets, but now I'm getting more Bionicle sets. And today we are picking up my first Bionicle G1 Titan. So let's open this box. Is it open on the sides? I hope so. Jesus, how? Oh, this is like that. Got it. We got some paper, it seems. And yeah, he's in baggy. We got some brown paper from the eBay seller. As you can see, here we have the parts that make up the 2006 Titan set. Brutaka. I saw Brutaka in like comics as a kid. I had some of those old comic collections from like paper cuts and shit. But I never got those sets because I got the paper cuts collections like years after the fact. Like I would go to like fucking I would go to like old used bookstores and find old Bionicle books, and I was like, hey, I like Bionicle. Let me pick up some of that. So yeah, I picked up a Titan. And I deliberated what Titan I wanted to get for a bit. I was deliberating between this and '08 Takanuva. This set has better joints, and I already have a decent number of 2006 sets thanks to me owning all the Anika already. So yeah. So looking at these parts, there's a decent number of parts. I mean, there's a small amount of parts. Hopefully everything's here. I'm going to build it and let you know if everything is here. This was a $20 set back in the day. I did not, I'll have you know, I did not get this thing for $20 today. It is far more expensive on the aftermarket now. I got it for a fairly decent deal. I got it for like about $20 less than the usual asking price from what I could see. At least for like a US seller. But, oh boy, that was a fucking conundrum. But yeah, I'm honestly kind of glad it's in parts. It makes this video a bit more awkward to make, but it gives me the opportunity to actually build Brutaka. I was going to take it apart and put it back together anyways, if it did come in full. I think everything's here. It looks about right. Hopefully everything's here. I'll let you know if something is missing. Again, but yeah, I'm excited for this. Before we go, let's get another look at that Olmec. The Olmec is a wonderful mask. This is Brutaka's mask, for those of you who don't know. And yeah, it's just such a cool mask. It's very large, but it fits his scale perfectly from what I've seen in images. Yeah, I hit the camera. But yeah, I don't think I can do much more yet. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is go off, download the instructions, build this set, and then I'll be right back here in a little bit, but for you it'll be like immediate. And yeah, I hope this goes well. But yeah, I'll see you in a second. And we're back. Hi, welcome back. I finished the build and also had a little bit of food because I had time. And I also broke my nail. Don't worry about it. But here we are. I've completed the build. So now we can finally take a look at the completed Brutaka. And he's coming out of frame. Okay. Again, this setup's usually made for 6-inch figures. And Brutaka very much is not that. For context, I have Witch Doctor from Hero Factory. And they are, to the top of the head, about the same height. Witch Doctor's only taller because of his stupid spikes. But oh my goodness. First off, I gotta talk about the build. Because the building experience, I was not expecting it to be as good as it was, but oh my god, it was resplendent. Like, I don't usually talk too much about Lego builds, I guess, or builds in general, build processes in general, but there is somewhat of an art form. It's part of the play pattern, really. And this toy made great use of it, especially in the torso. Like, okay, something I gotta gush over is these little constructions with the 2 golden Borak eyes. So they are connected in an odd way. So essentially, I can probably show this to you by turning him around a little bit. Sorry if angles are weird. In the back, you can see these little gray dots in his shoulders or whatever. Those are axle connections, but they go through a pinhole. Let me turn them around again, just for your convenience, because I like them like that. But yeah, they connect to an axle, and that axle connects to this Borak eye. But there's this gray little half pin that connects right there. And once you put everything together, it keeps it practically entirely in place. It wiggles like just a tiny bit, but like usually an axle through a hole. I could probably show this off somehow. I have parts with axles and I have parts with holes. Give me a second. But essentially, what usually happens with that kind of connection, if I bring this like this, is that it just kind of flops around like that. Don't worry about where those bits came from. But here, thanks to this being perfectly shaped for the Paraka torso that is at Brutaka's core, it only wiggles like a tiny amount, a negligible amount. It's beautiful. And like so much of the build is like this. Like this isn't held on with any like clutch power or any friction. It just kind of sits there, but it sits there really well, and it's not going to fall out. And like, yeah, it's just such a fun building experience overall. I did kind of go somewhat off script because I put on the mask last, which we'll talk about. But yeah, this is just such a fun build. I had a great time with it. But let's get into the figure itself. The first thing I will note is that this figure has aged. Not in terms of articulation, but the joints have been worn in. They have been well loved on this particular copy, and that means that the arms can't really hold themselves up super well. Well, this arm can. This arm's fine. It's very lightly armored. But this arm, the sword, tends to lead it to droop sometimes, but like, depending on how you pose it, sometimes you'll be fine. For my copy, I just need it to be at like a slight angle. A similar story happens with the hips. They're using these rubberized joints that I personally haven't owned before. They aren't in production anymore. They're the precursor to the friction extender part, which I hope you've seen. Really helpful part from CCBS. But like these are a bit annoying because they don't have nearly enough clutch power anymore. Because I mean, in part they don't have clutch power. In part, the rubber has slightly like degraded over the years and it's been rubbed off. So the legs aren't nearly enough to hold up the torso on one leg usually. Well, now you're proving me wrong. But you can see how this leg's slowly drooping down. But on two legs, he's fine. He can pose perfectly well enough. And something I will note, this is a Bionicle 2006 set. And the thing with 2006 is that it really increased the posability options for a lot of its sets. This tended to come down to, like, removing gear functions. So, like, Pohatu here. This is a 2001 set. He's got his gear function, he kicks, but he doesn't have knees, and he doesn't have elbows. And, it's somewhat fine because it's from, like, over 20 years ago, and fucking, my brain is breaking, sorry. It's from over 20 years ago, and it at least has a function. But then, like, nowadays, something this large, something this tall, I guess, what would be the word for it? Doesn't have functionality or articulation either way, because they're too big. The basic system parts are too dense when put together in the way that they are nowadays with modern Lego. They can't really stand super well. But some sets have managed to fit in articulation with a lot of pistons and a lot of stuff. But this set managed to have the best of both worlds. So there's this one set that came out late 2024, which isn't out at the time of the release in America. It's out in, like, Europe and stuff, but in America, where I live, it's not out yet. It's that Cole mech from Ninjago. So that set managed to include a lot of articulation, and it used a lot of dedicated joints, which I'm fine with. I love that. I really want to get that set when it comes out, but it's set up like a basic action figure, just with ratchet joints. But this set really shows what the old ball joint system could do, either CCBS or even just going so far back as classic Bionicle. But, like, okay, I guess I need to explain. These ball joints are large, especially compared to, like, other ball joints, even that Lego's produced. Like, you compare this to, like, the Mixel joint system, I guess, would be a proper comparison. Sorry, I'm dealing with something off camera that I noticed and I'm annoyed about. Here it is. Sorry, I'm just fixing up my Fies real quick. I've got Fies over here. I want to make a video on them. That production has stalled because I've gotten sad and gone ahead and bought a bunch of Bionicle sets, which you are seeing the fruits of that labor right now with Brutaka. But anyways, this is a perfect example. Usually for a articulated action figure, every piece of articulation needs some sort of dedicated joint. So moving it up like this, that's a dedicated joint. Moving it out like this, that's a dedicated joint. While they are somewhat connected, it's fairly dedicated. I mean, this isn't a great example. This uses ball joints, whatever. This thigh swivel, dedicated joint. This knee bend, dedicated joint. At most, they'll usually get 2 axes of rotation or movement or whatever, outside of very clutch cases like a neck ball joint. With these old Bionicle ball joints, they're large enough to where you can get a lot of friction out of a lot less general surface area, just because they're so large and they have enough clutch power. So what that allows for is each one of these 4 joints here, as well as the neck, of course, but that's different, has 3 axes of rotation, essentially. So, if I go in close, we can move forward as you would with a leg. We can move out as you would with a leg, but it can also swivel. It's not a full swivel, but it's enough to make him nice and expressive. And I think that's the beauty of this system, because, like, it's able to get a lot of bang for your buck. With just one joint, you're able to do what would take at least 2 joints to do. In an average action figure. And of course, sometimes they specialize it a little bit, so like the elbow joints can only do an elbow bend, which makes sense. Sometimes they freed that up, so like sets like Pohatu Master or Pohatu Uniter, a lot of the Uniters actually, they just have essentially a double socket where it's like the elbow is attached like this, so it can move forward, back, and left and right, and swivel like that. But, like, it depends on the set, obviously. It depends on what weight constraints these guys have, and this guy has a lot of weight constraints. And, yeah, it does help that he's lighter than if he was made out of Lego bricks, but he is still pretty heavy, which is where these come in. So you see he's got tendons, essentially, like, down his calves, up to his, like, thighs. And those just go to add extra friction, but they don't get too in the way because they're attached to a ball joint at the ankle, so you can still do every ankle pose you need him to. You can swivel the ankle somewhat. It's a bit more restricted, but you get enough swivel, and you can still do ankle pivots to move the ankle forward and backward. So he's still as posable as your $10 figure, which doesn't have those same weight constraints. And I think that's what's beautiful about Brutaka. He's able to do everything that you would want a $20 that you would want a posable action figure to do, even though he is so large and has so many pieces, and you would think that would restrict it, especially on a children's toy, but it doesn't. And LEGO of today could really learn something from that. Like, they have that one Cole mech, but it's been stated from, like, designers that Cole mech is a one-time thing, and, like, no! What the hell? You can do it. So why not? Especially for sets aimed at an older audience that cost near to over $100. This set had the articulation and only cost $20 retail. I spent like $100 more than that because he's such a popular set. But come on, guys. Whatever. It's sad, honestly, and whatever. To end this off, I want to show you the Olmec. I've seen some people criticize the size of the Olmec. I mean, it is big. The thing about the Olmec is it is big, and does lead to some conflicts. Let's bring him in closer. And it does lead to some conflicts with these bits when posing, but I do feel like it's well-sized for his body, because he's massive. Again, Brutaka is like, I want to say nearly a foot tall. He's like the size of the Emmy that we previously looked at. Not the biggest thing that I will have looked at in 2024, but still very, very big. And, like, he only cost $20 back in the day, and he's got all this articulation. He even has, like, these side blades, which you can pop out, but I like leaving them there, because it adds a lot of good shaping to his torso. It makes it feel very natural, the way his, like, torso grows out. And I don't know what to tell you, man. This set is just so good. If you get a chance to find it for a decent price, definitely go pick it up. Obviously, it's an old LEGO set. It's going to show its age. There's some joints that aren't as well toleranced as they would have been back in the day, just because of the way that parts degrade. That's true of every LEGO set, and especially Bionicle stuff, but every LEGO set does that. But yeah, I've got to recommend Brutaka. At some point, I'll get Maxilos and Spinax and see if that one's better. It's got more articulation, but it looks like it's somewhat more limited in some ways, and it's a lot more gappy. I didn't even talk about the color scheme. The color scheme is awesome. So the blue pins work fine. This set does have blue pins. I think those were introduced either this year or a couple years earlier. I forget. I was like a toddler at the time this set was released, which is why I'm going back to buy it now, because it's so cool, and I saw it in the comics. But the blue pins don't bother it because there's already blue in the color scheme. Yes, it's a lighter blue, but it fits in fine. And there's no red axles. There are no red axles. This is a black axle right there, right there. That would be a spot of red on a future set. That's a black axle. And then the dark blue and the gold fit so well together. And then the black fits very well with the dark blue. And it's like, this set is so well done in terms of a color scheme. And then it's got those bleeding red eyes up there, which you can kind of see. They're kind of being blown out. It doesn't really matter. And he's also got his big sword, and this clip is 13 minutes long because I'm just gushing about this. This video is going to be 20 minutes long, God. But this figure is just so good. Brutaka is just such a good set, and I honestly wasn't really expecting it. Like, I've heard it talked up a lot, but I didn't expect it to be as good as it was. This set is just so good. There are flaws. The inner thigh is severely under-armored, and I'm sure there's a way you can fix that. And it's got those exposed pins, and it feels a bit underdone. The arms feel a tad thin, but I don't mind too much, because this set is just so cool. I love it. This is probably making it onto the list. You probably already know this by now, because this video is coming out in February. But hopefully this made the list, unless I got something better than this. But yeah, I'm gushing over this. This set's good. If you get a chance to pick up a Brutaka, and out of all the Titans, from what I've seen, definitely try picking up a Brutaka if you're interested. But yeah, that's this video. Weird video, I'm sure. It's weirdly structured. It's kind of a review, but kind of off the top of my head. It's got a lot more off the top of my head thoughts than usual with this kind of thing, but that's just because this set is so good, and I had to gush to you guys about it. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all whenever the next one is. Uh, bye bye.